Topic of the day, creativity. So I'm reading this book, Embraining, and it's talking about the highest expression of our brain, our heart, and our gut, intelligence centers, which in itself is just really intriguing. It's a really good book. Highly recommended. Anyway, it goes through talking about how each one of our brains, air quotes there, has a prime function and a highest expression of itself. So for our head brain, which myself and many, many other people live in, and it's a dangerous place, but I've written and wrote and spoke about that many, many times in various ways. If you read between the lines. So the highest expression of our brain is creativity. For our heart, it's compassion, and for our gut, it's courage. So I've covered those off in other areas. So creativity is something that I've always struggled with. I've never seen myself as creative. I wasn't a creative kid, and I didn't really see myself as a creative adult. But something someone said to me at the gym one day kind of knocked me over the head and made me realize, oh, that's why I've never seen myself as creative. And it has to do with the pitfall of thinking that creativity is synonymous with artistic. See, those two things are like a square and a rectangle. A square will always be a rectangle, but a rectangle may or may not be a square. So artistic pursuits are always creative, but creativity does not necessitate artistic ability. We create. Every single human on this earth creates every day. So, how? Well, it usually requires us to expand our definition of creativity. And here's how mine was expanded for me. So this is why I love having conversations with other people. I don't remember why we were even talking about it. Oh yeah. So this guy at the gym, nice older Modi fellow, and I don't know how we got on the topic, but he mentioned that he liked to write short fiction stories. And I commented on how awesome I thought that was because, I only write experiential things and I don't have much creativity to make up newness in the form of fiction writing. And here I am applauding his ability to create, to make things up, and was very obviously downplaying my own way of expressing myself, which is in the form of nonfiction / experiential writing. And he very, very astutely pointed out, he goes, because I mentioned it's experiential because, my passion, my hobby is self-development. Developing myself, asking myself the tough questions, figuring out why I do what I do and how I do it. And he said, you're creating all the time. Self-development is creating. You're literally creating a new you. And I just stopped. Everything in my brain just stopped and was like, oh yeah, fuck, that's true. This is why I love having conversations, both with myself and others, because when we hear the truth, we instantly recognize it. Gut-brain intelligence. We feel what's right. We recognize truth when we hear it. And it's not a thought, oh, that's true. It usually that thought comes from a feeling. Like, yes, that resonates with me. That feels true. Anywho. So, I grew up in a family where my sister was an amazing artist. She could draw the most amazing things I've ever seen. And my dad is a musician. You know, I can play music by ear. I can pretty much play any instrument, and I like to sing. Love to sing. But I can't draw in between the lines to save my fucking life. And when it comes to sculpting, I can do it, I just don't care. You know, I just never have felt a pull to be artistic in the conventional sense. I left art class very, basically the last year I was forced to take art. I stopped taking art because I could not be fucked. I couldn't stand it. So, because of my limited definition of creativity being linked to artistry, I wrote myself off almost immediately as creative. And I just went through my life thinking I'm not a creative person. But let me look at what I did like to do as a kid. When I was, somewhere between the age of 3 and 5, I used to take out the phone book and leaf through it and just pick out random names and call people. I would literally call people at random and hold conversations. Back when I was a kid, we had party lines. So my phone line was tied in with our neighbor's phone line. So when you picked it up, if someone was on it, you were supposed to hang up, weren't you, and just wait your turn. Instead, I would listen to my neighbor's conversations because that was basically the old form of reality TV. Listening to the drama of my neighbors calling her boyfriend or whatever. Yep, that was entertainment in the late 80s, people. But I loved it. I'd go to the mall and I would watch people have conversations. I just was enraptured by it. I would love to just feel and I couldn't hear them. I couldn't hear anything they were saying. I would just watch them. I would watch their mannerisms. I would watch the way that they non-verbally communicated. I just loved people watching. I love watching people think. You know, you can see those people, they're rushing around like mad. You can tell their brain is in one place and their body's trying to do something different. And, I completely unbeknownst to me, I have made a study of people. And, I don't know how many years of self-development work it took for me to realize, actually it was a gypsy lady in Bath who was from, I don't know what country she was from, but she wasn't English. Oh, she was German. A German gypsy in Bath. Met a ex-American gypsy in Bath. And I knew that it was significant because I was just called to this shop. My feet just went there. And I just talked to this one. I just looked at her and she's like, "Oh, I've been waiting for you." And I'm like, "Yeah, Jesus, it's going to be one of those days." And she drew me a diagram that blew me right out of the water. She basically explained me to myself very succinctly. She drew this huge circle. Or no. First she drew a very, very tiny circle. And she said, "This is the awareness of a normal person." And it doesn't take much to fill it, because the circle is very small. And then she draws this gigantic circle over the smaller circle. And she said, this is your awareness. And this is why they call us gypsies. Because where we are and the people we know are just not enough to fill our awareness. We need more. Our souls need more food. Our brains need more food. So I realized that basically my entire life, this people watching, this obsession with not just people watching, but also seeing different things all over the world. This urge that I felt. It was just me trying to fill this huge awareness that I have, and I've known that I've had a high degree of awareness my whole life. I've always been so aware of like, oh, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that. Mostly I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that, and using it as a naughty stick to berate myself. But anyway, that's a topic for another day. Self-punishment. Woohoo! So, and now I'm sure you're thinking, what the fuck does this have to do with creativity? I'm getting there. This is how I create. I take in people as information. I take in places as information, and I put it through a series of, trial and error and checks and balances, and I don't know, my brain just turns it over, analyzes it to figure out, how do I want my life to be? Because I am an active co-creator in my own life. Probably because I was a victim in my childhood. I have fought against being a victim my entire life, and because the world is ironical, usually by fighting against being a victim, I victimize either myself or leave myself exposed to being victimized. But again, that's a topic for a different day. That'll be NLP studies to figure out how I've been doing that. So, how do I create? Well, as my friend at the gym so astutely pointed out, I create by being passionate about self-development, because I am literally creating and recreating myself, deconstructing, recreating myself at very predictable cadences, I might add. But my true form, my essential form of creativity is expression. So no, I'm not an artist. But what I realize is my entire life, I've been a talker. Who calls people at random in the phone book? A very, very extroverted little girl, that's who. It's how I express myself, and it's how other people express themselves that we create. Even as I write on my blog, I still didn't see myself as a creative person. And it took me a lot of reflection to realize that every time I write in my journal, I'm creating. Every time I record one of these silly little podcasts, I'm creating. See, silly little, I'm undermining myself. This is how it happens in real time. Woohoo! Love those real-time examples. This is me creating. This is my best shot. And whether people listen to it or not actually doesn't make any difference, because I enjoy doing them. I enjoy doing this. On the chance that one fucking person will hear it and think, oh, well, how do I create? How am I a creative person? Because our brains are designed to create. At their highest functioning form, they create. And all of us love to create. And when we don't, we feel like we're missing the plot, or we feel like we're missing something. Our lives become boring. And I don't want to be over dramatic and say meaningless, but when we get stuck in that rat race of life, where we just do the same shit every fucking day and we're not creating anything new, we feel bored. And a bit, like someone has let the air out of our tires. So that creating is really important to evolve our life, to develop in our lives and in ourselves. So what I find to be a funny story about expression is, so growing up I was notorious, and I do mean notorious, for my complete lack of filter. Shit would come out of my mouth that would not only leave other people astounded, but importantly, would leave myself astounded. This proclivity for absolute insane shit, not insane like, oh my God, we need to put her on lithium insane, but just callous, cutting, razor sharp, extremely sarcastic, extremely witty, almost always socially inappropriate stuff would come flying out of my mouth. But it always got a reaction. It always got me a reaction. Some people would be shocked, some people would be appalled, but 90% of people were just extremely entertained by the stuff that came out of my mouth. I was basically a stand-up comic for life. I mean, it still happens. Shit pops into my head. I'll look at someone and I'll think something. Shit'll pop up into my head and I'm like, oh, that's wildly inappropriate. But I'll make myself laugh. It went to the extent where, while I was living near Boulder, Colorado, I hung out with a group of boys who were all in their mid-20s. I was in my late 20s, I believe. And I didn't notice it at first, but this random shit that I would say earned me the nickname of Wildcard. And how I noticed they were calling me this was really funny. Because I don't think we were at a trivia night at some bar. And I said something totally not out of the ordinary for me. But I noticed that this one guy said, Wildcard. And it was the first time I noticed it. And I kind of looked at the other ones and I just had this puzzled look on my face, but shrugged it off or whatever. And I don't know, half an hour later when I said something else, some callous remark or some, I don't know, witty comeback to a question that was asked, one of the other ones said, Wildcard. And they, clinked their beers together and took a drink. And I'm like, what is happening? So one of the ones that I was really close with, closer than the others, I asked him, I was like, why do they keep saying Wildcard? He goes, Summer, have you not noticed? Every time something crazy comes out of your mouth, or unexpected, we say Wildcard, and we take a drink. That's your nickname. And I'm like, what? He goes, Summer, you have no fucking filter. You just say whatever. And I'm telling you, that has been with me since I could start talking at the age of, 6 months. I have always been a talker. And my lack of filter has really, seriously gotten me into some shit. It's gone so far as at one point, I just kept telling myself, like, why can't I just shut the fuck up? Like, I feel an actual physical compulsion to speak as a reaction. My default mode of reaction is to talk. And the quality of what comes out of my mouth has not always been 100% there. And even though I wanted to change that part of myself, I'll be honest, I loved the attention it got me. It's how I identified as being funny. So I thought if I lost my filter, I wouldn't be funny anymore, and then people wouldn't like me. So even though I didn't always love the shit that I said, because I'm serious when I say, sometimes I would have to stop and think, did that just come out of my fucking mouth? What did I just say? Or sometimes, and this actually happened a lot, I'd look at the shocked look on people's faces, and then, only then would I think, what did I just say? Because fuck, it really riled them up. I wasn't even aware of what was coming out of my mouth. And it's only now that I actually realize that it has stopped. Or not stopped completely, but it's definitely, like, I have a filter now, and I put it in and wasn't even aware of it. So how did that happen? Well, it happened because of the other higher forms of expression from my other intelligent brains. Mainly compassion from my heart. I no longer have an appetite to say anything that's going to hurt someone else, or ultimately not serve the greater good. And courage from my gut, because it actually takes me physical courage to not talk. I have to really dig deep and say, I'm not going to say that. I'm going to fight that compulsion to say that. I don't have to say that. It's not going to make someone feel good about themselves, or it's not going to make me feel good after I've said it. So I am going to fight that compulsion, and I am not going to say it. Staying silent for someone like me actually takes courage. The same way it would take a lot of other people a lot of courage to say what they want to say. I've always had the opposite problem because I am always been different. So that filter is me thinking, do I need to express this? Do I need to defend myself in some way? Or do I feel like these people need to hear what I have to say for some reason, and I'm not just spewing my victim stories on them for whatever reason? But this is how I create. I create with words. It's more, for me, expression. Creativity for me is expression. And interestingly, this is both verbal and nonverbal. Watch people dance, and they're creating. Watch people's body language as they have a conversation. They're creating. It's not just what we say and what we write and the lyrics we sing. It's the way we move. For me, creativity is communication. And communication is both verbal and nonverbal. I greatly respect artists and people with conventional creativity. But really my heart goes out to those everyday people who that doesn't resonate with them and they feel a bit non-creative. So it's those people that I would say, hey, you do create. We all create every day. We are creative beings. Our brain is always looking for ways to solve difficult problems or issues, or trying to work around things that it sees as barriers. Those answers are always inside our brain. But if we don't temper them with the wisdom from our gut and our heart, and think, okay, how am I going to act courageously? And how am I going to remain compassionate for myself and others while being creative? That's wisdom, because it takes all three to be wise. So there you go. my 2 cents on creativity. Highest form of expression of our brains. And since I tend to meander and blather on and get lost in my stories, I really just want to wrap it up as a take-home message. As humans, we create every second of every day with what we think, how we feel, and what we do. This is how we create our own lives. A lot of times it feels like things are being done to us, when really, it's how we choose to think and how we choose to feel and how we choose what to do about these situations that actually make up our life. So the highest expression of our brains is meant to be creative so that we don't have to do what we've always done in that situation, so that we can bring a little newness into our lives, as scary as it is, which is why we also need courage from our gut. Because anything that's new is going to be scary. Doing anything we haven't done before, including thinking differently, is scary. But this is also the biggest opportunity we all have in our lives to take control. We cannot control what happens to us most of the time. We cannot control anything that other people do or say. But, as the Buddhists love to remind us, although I have grappled with this sentiment many times, we can control how we react, how we act. We don't have to react. We don't have to do what we've always done. And this is our mind's ability to create. Just food for thought.